morning and welcome to Rising. Thank you for joining us today. We've got another great show to deliver, and I think we want to get right to it.
All right. Well, President Biden told reporters yesterday that he will hold Iran as responsible for the deaths of 3 soldiers stationed in Yemen.
Yes.
How do you Iran responsible for the death of those 3 Americans?
I do hold them responsible in the sense that they're supplying the weapons to the people who did it. We'll have that discussion.
We've heard these attacks in the past. What will be different this time?
We'll see.
Nikki Haley, meanwhile, called for the outright assassination of Iranian leaders over the killings.
You're saying now's the time to hit Iran?
Now's the time to hit their leaders. It's different. Don't go and bomb the country.
What about their infrastructure?
The infrastructure in Iraq and Syria. You start with that first. You do the sanctions and you take out a couple of their leaders. That's the way you start.
In their country?
If they're in their country, or you do like Soleimani when they left the country, you figure out where they are. Our special operations can do that, and then you take them out. That will send a message. We've got to do this immediately.
Now, in case you missed it, one State Department spokesperson refused to confirm if there's any evidence that Iran is responsible directly for those soldiers' deaths.
Iran was behind the attack. What does that mean? Have you seen evidence of financing or directing anything specific to this attack, not just generally, but specifically?
So maybe I need to clarify further from what Lita had mentioned. We know that Iran funds these groups, like Kataib Hezbollah. We know that these IRGC-backed militias are the ones responsible for attacks on our troops in Iraq and Syria. Beyond that, we're doing an intelligence assessments. We don't have. I can't give you today that.
This attack, linking it to Iran.
We just know that Iran funds these groups like Kataib Hezbollah and other groups that have attacked our forces, but I don't have more to share on that.
Meanwhile, The Intercept's Ken Klippenstein reports that U.S. military personnel in Iraq are on standby to forward deploy to support troops in the case of on-ground U.S. involvement in the Israel-Hamas war, according to an Air Force personnel memo that he obtained. So I think first thing I wanted to note, so Joe Biden saying he's selecting targets, he's planning for reprisals. An interesting contrast with the Joe Biden from the year 2020, who I've seen this tweet reappearing everywhere. Maybe if we have it, we can put it up, but I'll read it from January 6, 2020, in response to Donald Trump drone killing Soleimani. Biden says, let's be clear, Donald Trump does not have the authority to take us into war with Iran without congressional approval. A president should never take this nation to war without the informed consent of the American people. I agree. The Joe Biden of 2020 was correct. What has changed between then and now? So I fully agree that, and we heard from Lieutenant Colonel Daniel Davis yesterday on this matter as well, our troops were attacked, they were killed, and it is perfectly reasonable for the U.S. to respond to the perpetrators, to the militant group that did that. Now, these groups are supported by Iran. I think that's not very much up for debate, but whether that means that we should escalate hostilities with Iran itself is a very different matter. It's one that, again, would require congressional approval, for one thing. It's not just, we can't just start a war with Iran, and that seems to be something that Joe Biden has forgotten in the last 4 years.
When progressives, leftists, people who are broadly disaffected from the two-party system are harangued during election years and told that the reason they have to ultimately vote blue no matter who is because Donald Trump is a tyrant and a dictator, or whatever Republican happens to be up at bat at the time, is a tyrant and a dictator, and will do things like start illegal wars, escalate global conflicts, get us involved in nuclear brinkmanship and the like. I hope it puts to bed all of those arguments, this moment that we're in right now. And that tweet that you just read out, it has gone viral, and gone viral for a reason. Because one of the most significant cudgels that Democrats used to get people who even back in 2020 were not enthusiastic about Biden to get on board was this idea that Trump was a uniquely irresponsible statesman who should not be at the helm. And what we have seen, in fact, is an escalation of global entanglement during the Biden administration, which outstrips this is not any effort to rehabilitate Donald Trump's record, which was also too hawkish for my liking. But it frankly outstrips what Donald Trump did. And so going forward, it's really unclear how Joe Biden can continue to hold himself out as anything other than the other side of the same hawkish bipartisan coin that has been ruling the United States of America for a really long time. And I really just want to go back to this initial point. The State Department has acknowledged, as we just saw in that clip, repeatedly that there is no evidence tying this attack to Iran. Saying that Iran funds these groups is akin to saying that whatever Israel does, as it is being plausibly accused of genocide, as it is digging up graves and sending people dressed in as patients and doctors into hospitals to assassinate folks in the West Bank, not even in Gaza, as it drops thousands of tons of bombs and destroys most of the housing in northern Gaza. All of those war crimes, you could say, are America's doing because we funded that war. You could say, in light of the government's choice to withdraw funding from UNRWA, because there are these accusations that 12 UNRWA employees participated on October 7th, that America did October 7th because implicitly we funded those 12 UNRWA employees that are being accused of the same. The logic of this extends to the most absurd of realms. But here we are, not just using that logic to justify any incidental strike or retribution, but doing so in the middle of a global context that is already escalating in a unwieldy and deeply dangerous way.
Right. I mean, the reality is that many of the terrorist groups, extremists in the Middle East, do in fact hold the U.S. responsible for the reasons you spell out.
Yes.
Was
9/11 justified?
Right. Their thinking is that it is. Now, are we going to hold ourselves to different standards? I would argue that we should, and that the number one goal should be U.S., so not even really a who's at fault, but a what is in the best interest of U.S. national security, and and also what follows the prescripts of the Constitution, which is that we can't just start a war with Iran. Now, Nikki Haley, interestingly enough, there again, way too hawkish for my likings, but in fact, I mean, this is quite an indictment, but sounds more restrained than some of the people we've heard from, including Lindsey Graham in recent days, who are saying that we should hit Iran now, meaning hit the actual country of Iran, hit Tehran. They said that. Dan Crenshaw said that. John Cornyn said that. Nikki Haley said we should hit the militia group, fine, and then we should also kill Iranian leaders the second they set foot outside the country, which is what we did with Soleimani. So again, that's the foreign policy she's putting out there.
What a spectrum of options we have.
Right, similar to what Joe Biden has declared.
You're really damning her with faint praise there by saying that she compares favorably to Lindsey Graham and the like. But these are the options that are presented to us in our two-party system currently. We'll continue to follow updates on this escalation, of course, so stick around. We'll have more rising for you after this.